Hello, my name is Aaron Munns. I'm the Veterans Director at the Mesothelioma Center at Asbestos.com, a free help center for people affected by asbestos-related diseases. Today, I'm going to talk about the common mistakes that I see veterans making with their asbestos-related VA disability claims and how to avoid those. I have been a VA accredited claims agent for almost 10 years. In this capacity, I have assisted over 3,000 veterans with asbestos related claims. I'm an Army veteran myself and going to try to help you get your VA disability claim approved the first time through. The first common mistake that veterans make is assuming that the PACT Act from 2022 applies to asbestos exposure. It doesn't, and I'll explain why. Number two, do not assume that your medical condition was caused by asbestos. You need your doctor to put in writing that your condition was at least as likely as not to have been caused by asbestos, and we'll talk about that. Do not assume that the VA knows how you were exposed to asbestos based on your branch of service, your MOS, or job rating. You have to provide specific information so that the VA understands that the majority of your lifetime exposure to asbestos occurred on active duty and not before or after your service. And do not file your claim before speaking with a veteran service officer or VA accredited claims agent who can help guide you and make sure that you don't make an easy mistake that will get your claim denied. So, number one, do not assume that the PACT Act applies to asbestos exposure. The PACT Act that was signed into law 2 years ago does not mention the word asbestos a single time. Here you have, I did a search, has finished searching the document. No matches were found for the word asbestos. The PACT Act presumptive conditions only apply to certain types of exposures in certain places during certain time periods. The most common conditions that cause respiratory illnesses that are similar to asbestos related diseases are for burn pit exposures from the 1990 Persian Gulf through the current global war on terrorism in locations overseas, specifically in Southwest Asia, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, that area of the world. If you did not serve in one of those locations after 1990 and you have a condition that is on the presumptive exposure list on the PACT Act, it doesn't apply to you because you did not serve in the right location at the right time to receive presumptive exposures. So you're going to have to develop your claim traditionally for the VA. Do not assume that your medical condition was caused by asbestos. Just because you have a condition that can be caused by asbestos, the VA will not make that connection unless you have a nexus statement, a letter from your doctor. Nexus is the link between the current diagnosis and what may have caused it, where your doctor states that it is at least as likely as not that your current diagnosis was caused by exposure to asbestos. For an asbestos lung disease, it requires a CAT scan, a CT scan of your lungs that shows that damage, and a pulmonary function test that shows how much lung capacity you've lost as a result of that diagnosis. For any of the cancers in other parts of the body, like the urinary tract, digestive tract, or your airways, your doctor must state why they came to the conclusion, medical rationale for why they believe that specific diagnosis is at least as likely as not to have been caused by exposure to asbestos. And they must refer to scans, pathology reports, and typically for a cancer in another part of the body other than the lungs, they have to state that there is asbestos damage in the lungs in order to justify their conclusion that a kidney cancer or stomach cancer was caused by exposure to asbestos. The conditions that the VA recognize are right here: fibrosis, interstitial pulmonary fibrosis or asbestosis in the lungs, pleural effusion and fibrosis, pleural plaques, mesothelioma cancer of the pleura or peritoneum, cancers of the lung, bronchus, gastrointestinal tract, larynx, pharynx, and urogenital system, except the prostate. So if you have a diagnosis of any of those conditions, your doctor must state that asbestos is at least as likely as not to be the cause. Number 3, do not assume that the VA knows how you were exposed to asbestos based on your branch of service, your MOS, or your job rating. You must provide some information so that the VA rating officer who is actually going to read your application understands exactly how, when, and where you were exposed to asbestos, including your duty location, specific ships you were on, equipment that you worked with that contained asbestos, where you describe how and when you came in contact with those asbestos materials. If you have buddy statements or pictures, they can help strengthen your claim. If you need help with an asbestos exposure summary, we can assist you with this. Some of the key phrases that I encourage all veterans to include when they're writing a statement is to talk about any training or personal protective equipment that they received in the military or in their civilian work, or the lack thereof, and also referring to the specific latency period, which is the time from when you are exposed to asbestos to when symptoms present themselves and you receive a diagnosis. And this is out of the M21-1, the VA rating manual, and it says, many people with asbestos-related diseases have only recently come to medical attention because the latent period for development of disease due to exposure to asbestos ranges up to 45 or more years between first exposure and development of disease. I recommend putting that exact phrase in your asbestos exposure summary so that VA does not deny your claim because there is no evidence in your active duty medical records complaining or getting diagnosed with an asbestos-related illness. This helps educate or remind the VA rating officer about how long it takes to be diagnosed with an asbestos illness after you're exposed. If you have questions, you can contact me at aaron@asbestos.com. Call me at 888-321-8271. Here are all of the references that I used for this presentation. And you can also check out my other videos on YouTube. I have a longer video on asbestos exposure summaries, how to write them, what exposure were common for certain branches and MOSs. There is a video on nexus statements. There's also a training video for veteran service officers on how to help veterans with asbestos claims. Please let me know if I may be able to help.